A great elevator pitch is no more, no less than 30 seconds. If you're a little nervous and you rush it, maybe it comes out at 25 or 26 seconds. If you're really poised and you're really good at it and you're practiced, you might be able to stretch it out to 35 seconds. But the truth is, that's all your audience has the patience for or the attention span for. And if you don't start it out the right way, you're going to quickly lose them. So
Welcome to the LandLife podcast with your host, PJ Riley.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the LandLife podcast. My name is PJ Riley. Guys, if you're getting value from this podcast, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment at the end of the podcast. Now, here's the big thing. Our guest, Rudin, today is going to let you know how to get hold of him. So during the course of this podcast, if what he says resonates with you and you want to keep this conversation going, make sure you stick around to the end. That way you can get in contact with Glenn. I'll give a quick intro for Glenn. Glenn's a sales and marketing consultant and coach. He runs alwaysbecreative.com, and he is the message master. Glenn, how's it going?
It's going great. Thank you. I'm excited to be here on LandLife with you, PJ. Really, really excited. Thanks for the opportunity.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for being here. Glenn's got some super interesting things. We're not going to talk about, buying and selling houses. We're not going to talk about, what his brick and mortar business is. It's super cool. And I think it can benefit literally any business and anybody in the world that's, trying to get ahead, I guess. So Glenn, give us a really quick Cliff's Notes version of your background. Kind of catch us up to how we got to this point here.
Sure. Great question, PJ. So most of my background has been in product development. Over the years, I've manufactured and developed goods for Disney and for Universal, for the theme parks, Disney on Ice shows, all kinds of retail products where I'm involved in coming up with the idea, sourcing it out of China, manufacturing it there, importing it, getting it sold here on the front end. And over the course of a pretty robust career, I've probably developed pretty much any kind of consumer packaged good, souvenir, promotional item you can think of, probably hundreds of items at this time: t-shirts, plush toys, flashlights, communication devices, all different kinds of things like that you may not have had one of my products, but you've certainly had something similar to it along the way. And about 5 years ago, I started to understand that we as people are our own product. The big difference between you and me, and no endorsement here, but this bottle of hand lotion is this bottle sits on a shelf in a store, and it can't say much. It's got a label, and someone walks by, they read it, they like it or not, or they see it on a website, they like it. Whereas you and I and any of the people listening, we wear our label, but we've also got the option of speaking up for ourselves. So when I started looking at people as products, I said, I think I might be onto something here, because most of us people as products don't do a really good job of selling ourselves to the world.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I went on your website and I saw some of the companies you've worked for. Like, you're not joking. These are like the big ones. Disney, Revlon, the NBA. Before we jump too far ahead, how did you get into that? How did you get into that? Getting in on such a high level with such big companies?
Well, interestingly enough, the companies that I worked for that sold to those big companies were not huge companies. Now, I did work for Revlon, which is, multi-billion dollars, and Shiseido Cosmetics, same thing, multi-billion dollars. But listen, the interesting thing about any of those companies, PJ, is ultimately they all break down to the same thing, right? In other words, when you go on a sales call for one of those companies, there's not thousands of you going on that sales call. It's you representing the company. And when you go and call on Walmart, you're not calling on the 10,000 people that work for Walmart. You're narrowing it down, and you're finding the buyer in the category for the products that buy what you buy. And so it really does all come down to one-on-one conversations and how well you're able to communicate with people. It's really pretty simple. Those big companies seem daunting and seem intimidating, but the truth is it all really still comes down to one-on-one communication and relationships.
That's super cool. So if you're listening to this or you're watching this, know that it's not necessarily like it's not super overwhelming to work with these companies if it's just a one-on-one conversation, right? If it's just me talking to you, I mean, we talk to people every day, right? Okay, now let's get good at it. Now let's figure out how the hell we're going to get good at talking to people, because I'm not going to lie. I mean, when I was a younger guy, I would take like speech classes in college, and you go up there and you're like, all you got to talk for is 2 minutes, and I couldn't even get 2 minutes out. Like, my name is PJ, and I don't know, I go to school here, and it's just really awkward and difficult, and it's kind of strange because we talk to each other all day, but when we have to present ourselves, it's really difficult. So, Glenn, you're like you're an elevator pitch expert, right?
Yes.
How do people get over that initial fear of just getting in front of people and talking to them?
Well, look, listen, one of the most stressful things that people do and they are fearful of is public speaking. There's a lot of pressure. A lot of eyes are on you. So, even if you're in a one-on-one or you're in a group setting and you go to one of these networking meetings that I know you have out there in Colorado, like we have back here in New York, and you end up sitting around a semicircle horseshoe, and there's 20, 30 people in there at this Chamber of Commerce meeting or local business enterprise meeting. And ultimately, as it gets around that round robin, it's going to come to you. And the reason that most people fall short, fail, and are fearful, PJ, is because they don't take the time to prepare, to rehearse. And people would think, well, yeah, why in the world would I be rehearsing that? I'm just going to some meeting like that. Yeah. And then it's when you're sitting there and you see it start moving around the room and it's coming to you. It's unavoidable. It's like a train coming down the tracks. It's not going to be stopping. And now you realize, oh boy, I'm a deer in the headlights. Yeah. I haven't taken any time to think about this. And so now it's going to come to me. And the first thing I'm going to do is, and you start not literally stuttering, but you start fumfering for words, because it's no different than, let's put it this way, because I like to think of elevator pitches as performances. If you were an actor in theater out there in Colorado or here on Broadway in Manhattan, and someone said, hey, we're going to put you in a show, would you ever come on stage without looking at your script, rehearsing your lines, being in your costume? Of course you wouldn't. Yeah. But people do this every single day because they fail to make the connection between an elevator pitch and a performance. And if you really want to do a great job with your performance, your line's cold. You've got your wardrobe measured out. You know how to make eye contact and speak to people confidently. So it's really just a question of breaking down the X's and O's, if you're a sports fan, of what a great elevator pitch is and what steps you need to take to improve. Now, I'm not saying everybody out there is going to be a great orator, like Tony Robbins, or Barack Obama is considered, former president's considered, an amazing speaker for, regardless of what your politics are. Not everybody is going to be a great speaker like that, but between a 0 on a scale of 1 to 100 and 100 being the greatest, everybody out there can certainly push themselves into the 75, 80% range if they take the right steps.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm a new guy. I decided, I was told by my friends, hey man, you need to go to a networking group. You need to go to these networking groups because that's how you're going to meet people in your line of work, in your business. So then, and I've been there too, where you're sitting in that circle and it comes to you. Okay. Let's say I did prepare. What would that look like? What are some steps I can take to prepare to give that elevator speech when I go there? So I show up and I'm like ready to go.
Okay, perfect. So the way I teach elevator pitch to my clients or my students that I work with, every great elevator pitch, PJ, has got 3 key elements.
Okay.
The first and most important is the opening of your elevator pitch. Now, let's just take a step back for a second. A great elevator pitch is no more, no less than 30 seconds. If you're a little nervous and you rush it, maybe it comes out at 25 or 26 seconds. If you're really poised and you're really good at it and you're practiced, you might be able to stretch it out to 35 seconds. But the truth is, that's all your audience has the patience for or the attention span for. And if you don't start it out the right way, you're going to quickly lose them. So let's talk about those three elements. Again, opening, first, foremost, most important. If you don't open strong, you can't finish strong with an elevator pitch because it's only 30 seconds. So how do you open strong? The way I teach elevator pitch theory is with either a question or a fact about your business. So let's take someone like you, because I know in our pre-interview in the quote unquote green room, PJ, we were talking about your land buying business, right?
Yes, sir.
So I would open, if I were you and I was looking for a new audience of potential buyers for this land that you're buying up all over the place, I'd come up with something along the lines of, did you know that there is open property, affordable open property everywhere around this country, and it's super affordable? And if you wanted to get into the land buying business, I could get you there with one quick meeting. Now, what did I do there, right? I immediately got anybody who's interested in being a property owner kind of leaning in and saying, well, that sounded kind of interesting. I probably only took about 10 or 12 seconds to create that interest level by asking that question. And the other thing that I did, and this is interesting too, because I know you said, you go to some of the meetings and, some of your customers are there. The great thing about doing an outstanding elevator pitch is that even if the people in the room are not your customers, but now they heard something about your land buying business, they might say, that's not for me, but my brother, my friend, my boss, I know that they're into that. I want to listen to the rest of PJ's pitch because that sounds really interesting to me. So you're not necessarily just speaking to your customers. You're speaking to somebody who hears you, understands you, and might know your customer, even though that customer is not present. So that opening is super important. I'm going to give you a couple of don'ts. I just did some posts on Instagram about this this week. Don't tell us you're PJ O'Reilly. Don't tell us the name of your company is LandLife. Don't tell us you're located in Denver. We don't need any of that information in the opening that you're doing because it's irrelevant to us. When we need it, we'll ask for it. Because when you put that into the beginning of your elevator pitch, you're now eating deeply into our attention spans and you're taking away from what you're really trying to do, get us interested in what it is you do for a living. So did you know that there's land available all over this country and I can get you into purchasing that land at very affordable prices? There, I didn't mention my name. I didn't mention my business. I just talked about, wow, the great American dream. I can own some land out there in the great big United States. And who can help me do that? You can, because you've told me you've got affordable ways to do it. So the opening is super strong. Now, you could also turn that question around into a fact. And you'd have to do, or I'd have to do with you, some Google researching to find out, did you know that there are literally millions of plots and acres of land available throughout the United States, no matter where you live, that are available at affordable rates for you to purchase, turn over, and make great profits on? So in that way, I'm stating a fact about all this land that's available. Maybe that's something I didn't know about. Now, wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that because you and I were talking about this in the green room. I hadn't really thought about that before. Well, now that's interesting to me. So my introduction as PJ Riley has done exactly what I wanted to do. It's got me wanting more information. It's got me leaning in. And I'm not filling that introduction with information that I don't need. Name, serial number, rank, all that stuff we don't care about. And one more tip before we go into the second phase of your pitch. Please don't think that you improve your pitch by putting big, difficult college words into it.
Yes.
Because when you do that, here's what happens. You put that first college word out there. And the first thing that we've got to do is we stop listening to you and we start trying to figure out, what is that word? I never heard that word. What is that all about? What does that mean? In the meantime, you've continued with the rest of your pitch. We never heard it because we're thinking about that word. And heaven forbid you put a second one of those words in there. Now we've basically gone off the road, we're in a ditch. There's no way in the world you're ever going to get us back.
Yeah.
Target your elevator pitch to the level of a junior high student, 14 years old. If you could get them interested and understanding what it is you do, then you're never going to have a problem appealing to us out here, the masses that are just not that bright, but still want to be your customer.
Yeah, this is so cool. I was like, I was thinking about how I would do my intro to my elevator pitch on the way over here today, and it was nothing anywhere near that. It was like, my name is PJ Riley. I work for, it was really bad. So guys, if you're listening to this or watching this, make sure you're writing this down. Write all this stuff down. That way you can reference it. You can always watch the video, I guess, again and again and again. But make sure you write this stuff down. This is really cool, actionable type stuff you can actually use. You could use it today because it's a Friday here in Denver. I promise you there's networking events. There's something going on tonight. You can absolutely go out there and put it into practice right away. So anyway, sorry. Let's
Sure.
Keep it going, man. This is awesome.
Love it. Okay, phase two. Who would ever think a little 30-second, a little innocent 30-second pitch could be so complicated, right? But think about it. If you're a sports fan, I don't know, the Broncos are not having a great year. I'm a Raiders fan. They're certainly
we got a game
lost
this week
in the sauce, right? I think they're playing this weekend, maybe.
Yep.
But think about all the X's and O's that go into a football play, right? That gets executed in about 8 seconds, right? I mean, the guy's got to get the ball. He's got to get it out of his hands. He's got to hit the receiver, avoid the defender, all that stuff. It all happens so quickly. So the fact that you've got 30 seconds to do this, it's almost a lifetime when you think about it in terms of what you're trying to do. Second part of your pitch is called your U as in under, S as in Sam, P, Paul, your USP, unique selling proposition. Now, see, that starts to get into big words there. And so we're going to break that
I'm
down.
trying to figure out what we're talking about.
Exactly. We're going to make that really easy. What is different? What is unique? What is special about the business that you're in compared to the other people that are in that business with you? What can you bring to the table that's different about the way you do it than the way somebody else does? So let's go back to LandLife and you, PJ, right? So we already said, did you know that there's all this land available all over the country? And now what's unique about what you do is you don't have to find that land because I do that work for you. We just have to figure out where you want it to be. I'll do the searching and the surveys. So all you have to do is say, wow, that's where I want my piece of land to be purchased. And I take all that work out of it for you. Again, I've still not said anything about who I am, name of my company. I just have basically said, if you ever dreamt of owning your own land, I've got a unique system where I can find that, I can secure it for you, and all you have to do is say, that's where I want it to be. If you wanted to be a landowner and that's interesting to you, I am PJ Riley. I own LandLife, and I make owning land anywhere in the United States, that dream come true for you. Get in touch with me at, go ahead and fill in the blank there.
Yeah.
So it's the unique selling proposition. How do you do what's different? So you're in an unusual business, PJ, but let's, look at this from the standpoint of, do you own a restaurant? Do you own a creative company? Are you an accountant or a lawyer? How would you offer better service than somebody who's already providing that to the people you're speaking to? Because this is what we have to keep in mind. Now, you're in a unique space, as I said, but if you're in a commodity business, again, real estate agent, lawyer, even a doctor, a restaurant, any of those kinds of service business, you do cleanups, you do house cleaning, you do yard work. What do you do differently? Why do we want to think about switching from who we're doing that with now to you? And yes, you've got to think about this. You've got to add a different service, because the truth is, I would say, if I could see everybody who's hearing this podcast now, do you have an accountant or a bookkeeper that does your books? If you've got a decent sized business, you probably do. And so now if I want to be your bookkeeper or accountant, what's going to make you want to open up your books, all your dirty little financial secrets to me, if I've already got somebody that I trust who's doing that? I'm going to need to layer on some kind of extra service that I do there, an extra audit, Something else that I do, looking back over your past year's returns, maybe you didn't get all the money that you were entitled to. So I've got to look at what I do, and I've got to add something to that. So now someone who's got that accountant says, hey, you know what? My accountant doesn't do that for me. Maybe I should speak to this accountant and see if there's something that I'm missing out on. So unique selling propositions are based on features and benefits. What's a feature of your business? What's the benefit that I get out of that? So if you're a dry cleaner, maybe you turn the clothes over overnight. I don't know how you would do that, but maybe you do. So now I get my clean clothes back the next day. That's worthwhile to me if that's something that you can do. You know, if you're in the artwork, creative business, you know, maybe you get that done faster for somebody. Maybe you're in the product business and it's a commodity type business, but you have better quality. It means it's going to last longer. These are all features and benefits that we offer up as part of our unique selling proposition. So that's the second part of the elevator pitch, PJ.
Okay, so we have our intro, then we have our unique creative
selling proposition.
Now, do we need, we're only 30 seconds. Are we going 10, 10, and 10? Are we because if you're practicing this, you're like, I mean, I remember when I first started going on podcasts, right? I started to think about like what I'm going to say, how I'm going to present myself. And it was very long and I had to bring it down. I had to kind of break it down. So now I have multiple ways of doing it. There's a really short way. You know, if somebody says, hey, tell me really quick what you do. Or if they say, hey, man, just tell me what you do and how you got to the point we're at right now. How do we break that down so far on step one and step two? Are we doing 10 seconds each thing?
Well, we could use that as a rule of thumb. But of course, you know, you literally do have to take these and write them down on a piece of paper. And, you know, what I say is, you know, one of the things that I'm really good at, that I love doing, is being a wordsmith. How can you say what you need to say in as few words as possible, but still get the point across to somebody, right? So what we like to say, I like to use the quote from Albert Einstein: if you can't explain it simply enough, you don't understand it well enough yourself. Yeah. And this is an issue that I get into with companies that provide technical services. Oh, we can never do our pitch in 30 seconds. It's way too technical. Listen, we're not trying to understand the inner workings of how your company does what it does. What you're trying to do with that elevator pitch, you know, here's a great analogy for you. You know, I'll try to use my bottle of water here. If you go to the shopping mall and you're walking past the food court and you go by the people that do the Smoothie King or whatever it is out there in Colorado, or the pretzel place, or the Chinese restaurant, they don't give you the whole meal. They don't give you the whole drink. They give you a little capful. Here's a taste. See what that like. Swish that around in your tongue. It's sweet. It's strawberry. It's banana. You know, whatever it is, it tastes great. And now you've got that taste in your mind. So when you're thirsty, or when you're looking for that sweet tooth, you had that little bit of Cinnabon. Now you're going to go back for the 5,000 calorie, you know, whole damn thing, right? But how did they get you into it? With just a little taste, right? So your elevator pitch is not everything that's happened in your life and your business for the last 5 years. It's a little sliver that just gets PJ to say to Glenn, wow, that was really interesting. Can you tell me more? The idea of a pitch is to create interest and engagement. That's all you are looking to do. Let's face it. No one's buying a piece of land for you, no matter how good an elevator pitch you do, until they get a little bit more about the story, until they hear a little bit more about how does this all work. But if we don't ever get them to the table or the phone or a Zoom call to find out how it really works, then we don't have a business. Yeah. So the idea of the pitch is really just to create that interest level, get someone leaning in. So when you say how long is each part, right? You can play with that. A great introduction is probably 8 or 10 seconds. Unique selling proposition. And then the third part, which we'll talk about, is engagement. How do I get somebody engaged? The way I phrase it, the way I do it, the way I close it out in terms of, if that's of interest to you, please get in touch with me. And then you can throw in, I'm PJ Riley. Here's my number. Here's my email address. The name of my company, by the way, is LandLife, right? But you can see how all that other stuff doesn't even matter until you've got me interested enough to want to hear the rest. So I'll say this. Again, the way I coach this with people is you need a 10-second intro that you can use anywhere, anytime. So going to a trade show, going to a networking event, sometimes you don't even get to do a whole 30-second pitch. But if I say, hey, I'm in the land buying business. So if you like buying land or you're interested in owning land somewhere in the United States, hey, let's talk. That just did it right there, right? Hey, wow, that's interesting. I land, that's or in my case, right? I help people who struggle with pitch and presentation and communication. If you're struggling, but you know someone who is, get in touch with me. That's about 5 seconds, really, when you take the time. So here's one of your key tools, right? Get out that we all have one of these. We know this is 100% plus saturation, and go to your video, and you can film yourself, at the very least, record yourself, and start practicing this pitch. Play it back to yourself. How long did it take? Was it interesting? Was it engaging? And look, we all take for granted that when we watch a 30-second commercial on TV for a new car model or for some new drug that's going to, solve all the problems that we have, or a new restaurant or a new service or a vacation that we need to go on, these are all 30-second commercials. And the men and women that create these things get paid millions of dollars. But again, they didn't just show up with a camera and start filming, right? They come up with an idea. They come up with an engagement. They come up with a way to make it interesting to somebody. I say to anybody who's thinking about doing this, get really conscious. Go watch some 30-second commercials. In particular, I love the drug company ones, because what could be more involved than some new drug that just came out, crazy names and all the other interactions. And you know what, PJ, in 30 seconds, they will tell you a new problem you had. Hey, did you wake up the other night with shaky leg syndrome? You start thinking to yourself, wait a minute. I did, right? Then they're going to tell you that all the interactions, how taking this thing could kill you a million different ways from Sunday. And then they'll tell you how, it'll probably be covered by your insurance company. And, you got the phone out. You can't wait to dial and find out about how you cure shaky leg syndrome, which until that commercial started, you didn't even know you had.
Yeah. That's super interesting. So you're basically bringing the other person into your story. I mean, I've noticed, and I do a lot of interviews. So I've noticed, Glenn, you already have told me, you've brought Colorado into this conversation, right? You spoke about that. You spoke about me. You spoke about my business. You brought me into this conversation on a personal level. And that's what these commercials are doing too, right? They bring you in. Do you have shaky leg syndrome? I like that one. I'm going to use that one. I think I kind of did. My leg did kind of shake. So it brought you into the story, and it brought you into their business, their idea, their conversation, right? That's super cool too.
Right, because it's all about empathy. The other thing that, again, we touched on it a couple seconds ago. No one is buying, this is the people, and I have nothing against them. They're the nicest men and women out there. Solar panels, right? When I run into people at networking meetings who sell solar, right? They've got their tape measure out. Like, where's your roof? What direction does it face? And it's like, we, and I don't know how often, this is covered on your podcast. We as human beings buy from people that we know, we like, we trust. And so if we don't know you, we can't buy something from you. Forget liking you, we've just met you. So the way that you create that interaction, like you're saying I'm doing with you, is making it all about your listener, not about you. We know what's in it for you. You're going to sell another piece of land, or you're going to pick up a new client who wants help with their branding, or you're going to pick up a new accounting contact, or you're going to pick up a new home cleaning client. We know that's what's in it for you. It's a commission check. It's a new customer coming in. It's more revenue for you. But we want to think that it's all about us. We want to be selfish little kids here. What's in it for me? Where's my cookie or my lollipop? And the more you focus in and get that other person speaking, the more you break down that barrier of salesperson to salesperson being sold to, and make it a human connection that's about them, where you really care about them. I care about your dream of wanting to own some land in Mississippi or wherever it is, you're selling somebody today. Then somebody cares about that. They feel the empathy of it. And that's why that question at the top of the introduction is so important, because that says to somebody, hey, he or she has thought about this and tapped into a need or a want or a desire of mine. And now I want to hear more about it because I feel like they're talking to me. And keep this in mind too. This is really important too. We all think we want to go to these networking meetings, whether they're virtual or in person. And, we're going to walk out, with a stack of, 50 business cards because everybody there just fell head over heels in love with us. And that's not realistic. How many people could you really connect with like that? You really want to go for quality, not quantity. People who really did resonate with what you were saying. So now in the next follow-up conversation, it's somebody who really is interested in what you did and not somebody who you forced a business card out of, who really has no connection with you or what it is you're trying to do.
Yeah, that's super interesting. What would you say though? Like, all right, let's stick on that for a second before we go to number 3. I go into the business, the networking event, right? I show up to this networking event. I'm looking around. Everybody looks about the same. I'm nervous. How do I get that started? How do I get that conversation going so that I can find the right people that fit who I want to connect with?
Well, again, I think for me, going to networking events like that is all about being liked. And, for starters, if you're going to networking events, number one, show up early, not late. When you get there early, the room is quieter. There's less people there. There's more of a chance of having a one-on-one conversation where all these kind of cliquey groups around the room have informed. And now you feel like you're invading, on some private little group within the group's space. So get there early. Second one, have something topical in mind before you even get to your pitch. In other words, like the last thing in the world I want to do is show up and say, hey, PJ, I'm a marketing guy, and I really want to sell you my marketing services, kind of a thing. No, hey, listen, hey, I heard you're from Colorado, but you moved all over the country, right? Where's your favorite place of all the places you've been? Get a conversation started, right? And again, make it about somebody else. See if you can find out something about them. And again, if we're both cold, we don't know one another, a simple hello. How are you doing? How long have you been coming to this group? Is it working out for you? Just to break the ice down. And now if you've taken my advice, you've got that elevator pitch, neatly tucked into your pocket, and it's ready to go when it's time to put it out there. When someone gives you that launch code and says, hey, Glenn, what do you do for a living? Well, so many people struggle with their elevator pitch, PJ, that this is something that I love helping people with. And if you or someone is struggling with that, this is something that I'm really comfortable with. And I love getting people comfortable with doing it. So, I don't know if it works for you or it's something you need, but just something to keep in mind about what I do. How about you? What do you do? Right. And then we just get into a nice, friendly conversation.
That's cool. So, and one thing I want to say about that too, is when you are that first person, when you go in early and you get that one-on-one conversation with maybe 1 or 2 different people that also showed up early, right? Great advice, by the way, because when you have that one-on-one conversation and it's just the 2 of you talking, now that person heard your great story, right? There was no distractions. They heard your cool story. That person says, hey, Brian, come here. Check this guy's story out. Like, this guy sells land. This is crazy. Dude, tell him your story again. Just tell him your story again. And it's an easy intro. I've done that quite a bit, actually. Been able to go into networking events, utilizing your strategy, exactly like what you're saying. And it makes everything so much easier. So if you're a new person going into these events, it can be stressful. It can be like, what do I do? But if you use that strategy, you can get introduced to other people without even having to do the work yourself. That initial intro is brought by somebody else.
Absolutely. And this is the thing. Once you break the ice and someone has a good sense for what you do, now the next thing that I want you to seriously consider is developing 1 or 2 great stories about how what you do for a living has benefited someone, made their dream come true, changed their life, made an impact on the world. Because now, once you've done that pitch and someone says, oh, that's interesting. You're in the land buying business. Oh, that's interesting. You're in branding and messaging. Now, what you want to be able to do is say, hey, can I tell you this unbelievable story about this guy from fill in the blank, from Detroit, who, didn't know the first thing about owning property. And now from working with me, he's got 30 acres on Lake Michigan that he was able to, and you go on and on about the details of some great success story you had, because now what you're doing is you're enabling that potential customer, or they're listening to you and they know somebody else who's involved in this. You're giving them a story, and people love stories. We remember stories. We're taught at a young age to listen to someone's story, and stories become sticky to us. We remember the details of the stories that we hear from people, and then we're able to go out and kind of mimic not all of that story, but a good portion of it to somebody else. That's how you really make yourself memorable. So you start with that little 10-second introduction. Then you've got a 30-second pitch where you're developing it a little bit further and telling somebody what's unique about what you do. And then you've got tucked away a great story or two about how what you do has made a huge impact on somebody else's life or business or what they do, because now that shows that, again, you're empathetic, you care about them. It's not just about the sale. You love what you do. You're enthusiastic about it because what you do changes people's lives. These are the kinds of things that people remember, and these are the kinds of things that people will tell other people about. Exactly what you were just saying. Hey, you got to grab this guy. You got to hear this story about what this guy did. And listen, we don't want these stories to be unrealistic, right? We don't want to hear that you sold somebody the Brooklyn Bridge, because that probably was impossible. But, within reason, when it's a great story with a great execution and a happy ending, people love that stuff. They remember that stuff. They want to share that stuff. And more importantly, they've now got a place in their head, in their mind for you, because you've created that space via storytelling.
Yeah, this is really cool because one of the main reasons it's cool is that I think a lot of people master their craft, their field. Let's say I'm a realtor. I'm the best realtor. When people show up to that house, I can tell them all the cool things about this house, but I don't know how to tell other people what I do, right? Like, you have all these great experts in their field, but they can't convey that to other people. So they can't really grow their business, right? When they go to meet, let's say they're a builder, right? They want to meet a lender. I can't tell this guy, or, a lot of people can't say I'm the best builder ever, because they just don't know how to convey that message. So this is super actionable, like 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Take this stuff to heart and make sure you practice this for all the people listening out there. One thing I also want to talk about, you brought up the phone. I guess we're shifting gears a little bit here.
Sure.
You brought up the phone. Social media is such a big deal right now. I mean, the internet is such a big deal right now. We can communicate with people on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, dating sites, Zoom. I can go across the country and talk to somebody face to face, just through a simple app. Is that helping, or is that hurting us when we want to do actual in-person contact?
Well, so look, I've got two schools of thought on that. For all the people, for a guy like you who's based out there in Colorado, who are local and want to be Colorado landowners, Coloradan landowners, that's great for you to show up at a local meeting, and you can actually physically take these people to the property. And again, for you, I don't know if buying land internationally is something that you've actually gotten into yet, but certainly that would be on the table. Mm-hmm. The beauty about the internet and what it presents for, let's say, somebody like me, is I now work with clients and companies all over Europe, all over Africa. I've got contacts literally everywhere as a result of this technology that we've been gifted with, this Zoom platform. And so now I've got the ability to go to networking meetings anywhere in the world, where before the pandemic, before all this stuff ensued, I was basically stuck doing things here. Not that there's not an unlimited amount in the New York area, but it was with a lot of the same groups and a lot of the same people here in Long Island where I'm based, or going into Manhattan. Now I can basically commute to my desk in 30 seconds, turn on my camera, have my virtual background set up. I've got my branding, I've got my messaging. And in some ways, this is even more effective for me than being able to do this face to face, because a lot of what I do, just like what you do, I can provide virtually, right? And you've got visuals, you can share screens, you can do all that stuff. So the only thing that you need to make sure you're doing is, when you're going to be going virtual, is to understand the importance of eye contact, looking into your camera, the importance of being well lit so people can actually look into your eyes and see what you're talking about, right? We don't want to think that we're speaking to somebody who's in the witness protection program someplace, and that's what a lot of people look like. They're, broadcasting from a bunker someplace, and they don't really want to be identified.
Yeah.
That's not going to create a lot of trust. But if you get really good at understanding how to communicate with your camera, having a good microphone, good audio, good visual, good backdrops and things like that, you can be tremendously effective doing what you do, doing what I do, and what a lot of other people do if you're in a service-based business, right? Again, if you're local and you operate, a land maintenance business or a local car wash or things like that, it's slightly different. It's slightly different for sure. But if you're in the business of selling to other businesses and making things happen like that, the world is really at your fingertips here to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So I was talking to my kids about this, and I feel like if you were around pre-internet, pre this kind of contact, you had to develop personal skills, one-on-one, me talking to you, right? So I think for us, moving into this, moving online is a little bit easier. We were already able to talk in person, so it's not a huge deal. I notice a lot of younger people, they have difficulty moving from this Zoom thing to in person, right? They're able to do this because of all this technology, but when it becomes a one-on-one meeting, they're just not able to transition like that. Does that make sense to you? Do you see kind of how that would, how would you fix that?
Well, look, to me, and I agree with you, and I think the way that you fix that is you've got to force yourself out there and do it, right? You've got to get out there. You've got to get over that, because look, ultimately, at some point, you're going to have to be in a room with someone making some kind of a presentation. Now, again, you might be lucky enough to just live in the world of Zoom and do this kind of business around the world. But I would like to think that eventually, you might have to show up at headquarters. You might have to actually be in front of somebody. You might have to be wearing the right clothing, have the right personal branding in mind for yourself to make that impression that you need to make. And you need to be able to, I think we're back probably now to handshaking, to looking people directly in the eye, to having body language that shows that you're not cocky, but you're confident in what you do. You believe in what you are doing. And so I find that a lot of young people are not even comfortable doing this. I find that a lot of people are showing up to Zoom group calls, and we just get the black screen, with white writing there for the name. And I often say to myself when I see that, look, if you're not confident enough to put yourself on screen and have a conversation with me, what is it telling me about how confident you are in the rest of what you're doing? And, someone will, well, I didn't have time to get dressed. Really? How long did that take? Right. I couldn't get my room, couldn't get my room, straightened out. What is that telling us about, who you are and how you're going to execute, a contract or an agreement with us? So all of these things are ways that we can improve what we're doing, or we can, further separate ourselves from other people by having the ability to do it. But all of them really require somebody to take the time and say, hey, this is something that I'm not good at, but I know if I do it 10 times, 20 times, I'm going to improve at it. And then if I level off and now I can't seem to get past that, that's when you reach out to a coach like me to say, hey, this is where it's going wrong for you. This is what you're not doing right. This is how you're not showing up. And there are ways to get better at all of these things, but we all have to want to make the effort to do that.
Yeah, all right. I like that. I like everything you've said so far. This has been really good stuff. And like I agree, because when I first started doing podcasts, it was only this year.
Wow.
I'm 44 years old. I don't have I didn't have this. I was great at talking to people in person. It's great. It's easy. You go up, you shake hands. Hey guys, how's it going? That's really easy. But talking on a camera was very difficult. So exactly like you just said, just got to do it. You just got to do it over and over and over. But I think what you provide is the strategy. So as opposed to just me walking in and just being like, I don't know what to say, I'm really nervous. I show up with a game plan that you provided, right? So like if I were listening to this and I'm writing notes down, like I hope you guys are, you have a strategy to follow versus just kind of jumping in without any game plan.
Sure. And again, look, we do have to understand not everybody is going to be comfortable speaking to the camera. That takes practice. Not everybody is going to be comfortable speaking in front of a group. All these things take practice. There's a reason that people have a fear of that. It is very, very real. Yeah. But the only way that we ever get over any of these fears for ourselves is by confronting them, by overcoming them. And the number one way to overcome them is practice, rehearsal. Very often I'll say to somebody, look, if you're not comfortable doing this now, set up a one-on-one call with me. And as long as you're not too sensitive, I'll give you feedback on where I think you're missing out right now in terms of the impression that you're making on somebody. Yeah. But I think most of that phobia, PJ, comes from people just not being prepared. Because when you're not prepared, you get more nervous. When you're more nervous, you're more fearful. When you're more fearful, you can't be yourself. You're worried about too many things that you haven't taken the time to eliminate, in terms of what they are, right? So before I ever come on camera with you, I've already done my own one-on-one Zoom call, right? I've opened up the camera, turned on the lights, tested the microphone, listened to how I sound, got everything arranged on my desk so I know it's all nice and neat. It's not just dropping in out of the blue, literally, and hoping that it all works well. Because when you do that, it's nerve-wracking. Is this going to work right? Is he going to hear my microphone? Am I coming across clearly? Is the image correct? Is the color right? Is my lighting okay? Are people going to understand what I'm talking about? All those things weigh into your psyche if you're not prepared and you're not practiced.
Yeah. Preparation makes everything so much easier. It's just so much easier when you show up, and we've all shown up to those things, especially Zoom calls. When you're at a company Zoom call and somebody calls on you, right? You have no idea even what they asked. You don't know what the question was. You're not prepared, and you stumble through this. You have no idea, right? So, like you said, show up prepared, and just little things here and there can help quite a bit. Glenn, this is like a master class in communication. This has been really awesome. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate that too. Thank you.
Is there anything we're missing here though?
Look, beyond the practice and the storytelling, there's another thing that we didn't talk about. Mm-hmm. And that's your verbal messaging, your nonverbal messaging, right? Because, we talked about showing up at these meetings and immediately, walking up to somebody and saying what you want to say and being impressive because you've rehearsed that introduction line and people like it. But there's a whole lot of evaluation that we do as human beings before we even start speaking, right? Depending on how you're dressed, right? We were talking earlier, about a consumer product. What is the label that you're wearing before you say hello? What is your wardrobe telling us about your confidence level? What is your posture telling us about your confidence level? What is your breathing pattern, right? All these things as human beings, we're really, really quick. It's almost like, one of those scenes from the Terminator movie, right? When the eyes fix on that person and all those things start, gyrating in the robot's brain, and it's evaluating human being, overweight, this, that, the other, right? Look, as human beings, we are robotic like that. We do make all these evaluations. We do jump to conclusions. I say to everybody, you've got to be great in 8 seconds or less. because that's how long it takes when we become aware of you. Hey, you just walked into the room. Now I'm looking in that direction and you've come into my stream of consciousness. We haven't spoken yet, but I'm already, quick once over. And in my research, more than half of us as human beings, PJ, judge one another based on appearance.
Right.
So before you even start saying hello, if your wardrobe doesn't match what it is you do or what we think is the basic for what we're looking for, there's a really good chance before you even start speaking, we've already jumped to a conclusion. I do this great bit on confirmation bias in my presentations and my Would You Do Business With You or my breakthrough interview, where I'll put up a picture of someone that everybody in the audience is looking at the same exact time for the first time. And I'll say, what is that? What do you see when you see that picture? And people will immediately, within 3 seconds, oh, professional, good looking, polished, young, handsome, pretty. And most of them are really positive things because the first picture I put up is a really good looking person who's dressed really nicely, right? And then I say, well, listen, what if you found out that was the #1 cyber criminal in the United States on the FBI most wanted list? What would you think of that person, right? Everybody's like, ooh, really? No, that's not true. But what if that was the case? Then the next picture I put up is like a real tough guy wearing a hood over his head and looks like he potentially could be real trouble. And of course, all the adjectives that immediately come flooding out: scary, gang member, tough guy, hood, all these negative things. I was like, what if I told you that that's the guy who's the #1 cybercrime solver for Fortune 5,000 companies? What would you think of him? Oh, totally. And so the point is, within the 3 seconds that these pictures go up on the screen, we're evaluating. Well, that's what happens to us on Zoom calls. That's what happens to us in person. We jump to conclusions. So make sure, however you decide you want to dress, that it's not going to detract or take away from you and what you're trying to accomplish in business. And I'll just say this really quickly before I throw it back to you. I have some people that will argue with me and say, hey, listen, whether I've got tattoos or not, or I dress like a slob or not, shouldn't really have anything to do with the level of the work that I'm willing to do for you or with you. And I'll agree with them 1,000%. Mm-hmm. The problem is that if we never get to see the work because we've already prejudged based on something that we see that is taking away from your chances, why do that? Why do that?
Yeah, it goes back to preparation again. You show up prepared, right. Show up wearing the right clothing. And sometimes the clothing doesn't necessarily have to be like, if I were to go to a networking event in New York City, I'd wear a suit, right? I'd wear a nice suit. I'd be cleaned up, freshly shaven. I would look that group. If I'm going to one in maybe a rural part of Arkansas, I got this hat on.
Different.
Maybe I got a flannel on. Maybe I'm a little bit different. But yeah, definitely dress for your audience too.
I'll just toss this in really quickly. So, sure. I have a book that came out this year, A Brand in Your Hand. I don't know if you saw that on my website. And it's what's really unique about this, beside the fact that it's all beautiful full color drawings throughout it, is that I've written the book completely in rhyme. The entire book rhymes like a Dr. Seuss book. So on the topic of personal branding and appearance, what we were just speaking about. So when you go out, it's best to prepare, since we notice your clothes and the style of your hair. Before you even had the chance to say hi, you might turn us off and we won't know why.
That's great. I love it. Glenn,
that's from A Brand in Your Hand. If any of you are interested.
Brand in Your Hand. Okay.
Yeah, that's up on Amazon for sure. You can grab that. Yep. Full color, fully rhyming. Just like to throw that in because for people who are not into this whole brand and message space like I am for years and years, it is a great, simple introduction to branding, messaging, elevator pitch, all the basic concepts. And then if you want to dig further into that, you find a coach like me, or go to the library or go to the bookstore, and you can get, all kinds of deep dive information on branding and messaging and pitch. This covers the basics for everybody that is not really from this world that I live in.
Okay. And it rhymes. That's really cool. I mean, that's always stays in my head. You know, when I hear
Yes.
a rhyme, I could have heard a rhyme from third grade, and I will remember that rhyme, right? Even if it,
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
yeah, catch it exactly. That's exactly right. You know, that's really cool. I like that. That's very smart. So let's say people do want to get hold of you, though. How do we get in contact with you?
I am beyond easy to reach, PJ. So we can start out with my website, kind of see it up here. Always Been Creative. So it's alwaysbeencreative.com. You can find me on, and you can write to me there at Glenn, 2 N's, at alwaysbeencreative.com. I'm constantly posting tips and tricks on branding and messaging on Instagram. You can find me there at Glenn with 2 N's underscore Rudin, Rudin underscore message, MESSAGE underscore master. Glenn Rudin message master, or go to LinkedIn. I'm constantly there also. Connect with me, follow me if you want more interesting posts and information on branding and messaging and business strategy. And that's just simple. Glenn Rudin, GLENN As far as I know, I'm the only Glenn Rudin on LinkedIn, so I'm really easy to find there as well. Any of those ways you engage with me, you're going to hear back from me. And if you want my book, it's up on Amazon, digital or a hard copy.
Awesome. That's really cool. Okay, I'll have to add that to the collection of books we have behind my
I
head
get you
here.
one.
That'd be great. Okay, Glenn. Oh, by the way, we'll put all that information in the bottom of the notes here too. So in the show notes, we'll have all of your contact information. So, Glenn, here's the big question. Here's the question we ask at the end of every podcast. This is the big one. It's like a Mensa level question.
Here we go.
If you could buy land anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
Oh, I love that question. And listen, I live here in Long Island, and we've got these gorgeous, Hamptons out here. So I would say there, or I would say in North Carolina in the Outer Banks. Similar kind of real estate right there on the water. You've got a sound on one side, you've got the Atlantic on the other. That would be a dream. Hilton Head Island might be another one.
Hilton Head's very nice, from what I understand. I checked into that yesterday, actually.
Spectacular.
Yeah, we looked into Hilton Head yesterday for land stuff. But yeah, that's awesome. So got to have water, got to have water nearby. Is that part of the criteria?
I grew up here in the Northeast, and so I've always been close to the ocean. And as much as I love the mountains, like where you are in Colorado,
not a lot of water.
My first favorite is that ocean. As long as I'm not so close to it that it's going to wash me away with one of these big storms. But yeah, there's just something peaceful about the ocean. Love that.
Good deal. Glenn, I really like actionable podcasts. I really do. I like listening to them. I like interviewing people that have, actual things that you can take with you and run with it, and then contact you and follow up and get even better. So I really do. I really appreciate this, man. I'm pleasant. I'm very happy with how this interview went and all the great information that I get to use too now.
Listen, I'm thrilled, and I hope that the people who are seeing and listening to your podcast are being helped by this, because I will say, look, I make money when I coach people doing this? Of course I do, but I hate to see people struggle, and I know that they do with something like this, and it's something I've got a great talent for helping people do, figuring out how to speak about what they do. So if you're out there struggling, there are ways around this. Don't let that hold you back from achieving your dreams, because it's not all that difficult to get good enough at it that it's not going to be the thing that holds you back.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Glenn. Guys, sure you had a lot of fun. And until next time, I'll see you on LandLife.